let's directly now jump into the panel. So we have half hour, and I would like to ask Alina, Benjamin, Bernhard, and Jan to switch on cameras, and then we discuss. Okay, so I think the idea was to reflect a little bit what we've learned today, and yeah, and simply also look a little bit into the future, what's happening. So I think my opening question was a little bit to ask everyone to say one sentence. So if the sector is doing enough. So I think Jan has almost answered it. So showing on his last slide that we're only trailing behind the car industry, but doing better than most others. So, but maybe to the others, so very quick one sentence answer. So is the solar industry as a whole doing enough today when it comes to sustainability, or could we do more? Maybe Benjamin first.
Honestly, I think we're moving in the right direction as compared to, say, 2 years from ago. Okay. However, exactly which direction we need to be set, and how high the bar needs to be raised at the moment remains to be seen. This is my, I guess, 1.5 sentence at the moment. Back to you.
Okay, Alina.
I think Ben made a very good comment or a very good approach to the question, but I think that no, the answer always has to be no. And that's not just for the solar industry, that is for any industry, because sustainability is not a static thing, right? What seems to be common practice today is probably outdated tomorrow. And so when you're doing sustainability, and you know, a word that very often goes with it, it's due diligence as well, right? Environmental, social due diligence, etc. You can never just stand on, you know, you can't rest on your laurels, if I may say it like this. So no, I don't think that anyone is ever doing enough, but we are nonetheless going in a really good direction. And a lot has been done in the last years, that's for sure.
Okay, Bernhard?
Yeah, today we saw that there are many activities improving sustainability, but I think the solar economy does not make its sustainability visible enough.
Okay, good point. So then let's go a little bit into the details and talk about the industry's commitments. I would like to first talk a little bit about what the industry is doing, also voluntarily. That's also what Bernhard has shown, and then talk a little bit later also on policy regulations that are, of course, some boundary conditions that are fostering and pushing activities. And the question is also if this is how helpful that is, and sometimes also how painful that is. But let's talk maybe about the industry commitment. So let's also start with Ben, who gave the first presentation. And it was interesting when you showed the 17 SDGs, and that Longi is very active, and I think you're excel in so many things, also with your R&D rates, how much you're spending on environment. But when you look at these big tasks, this big challenge, because I think this is 25 or 27 maybe first interim target, then there's 2030, and finally it's 2050 when the world, or most of the world's countries, want to be carbon neutral. So if we look at all the measures you've shown, so what's the strategy to, and what's actually the priorities you're setting mostly when you set up this gigantic effort of improving sustainability? Well,
I think starting with the SDGs, I think that is essentially the first bar, okay, the first low bar, let's say it this way. it creates a framework where you can start building your SDG building blocks against that. But more importantly, it is where I think, Michael, I think more important what we need to look into is how do we balance the political mandate, okay, and the political landscape with commercial requirements at the moment. Okay. Right now, a lot of this are being driven by, like for example, SDG, NGOs at the moment on international standards at the right. And then you have the lawmakers mandating CSRD, CSDDD, ban on forced labor, and that is in part driving the CSG forward. But is this a natural way of doing? Is this a correct way of doing this? I think we need to find an answer that. Secondly is on the commercial side of things. Let's put it delicately in the sense that we all exist in different geopolitical regions at the moment. And different geographical regions have different interpretations on where the standards lie. Okay, so we need to find a commercial viable solution to the political, let's just call it, requirements. Okay, but more importantly itself, we need to start looking at the big picture, like you say, and what my colleague from TaiyangNews Solar, my counterpart from Solar has mentioned, what is the big picture of sustainability? Okay, is the law driving the correct way? Is it even enough? Okay, the bar keeps raising today, and we all say net zero by 2050. Okay, but what is the roadmap to that at the moment? The reason why LONGi has not committed to roadmap 2050 itself is that we haven't validated that roadmap. It's as simple as that. Okay, we are in the process of validating it right now. So all I want to say is the political and mandate, okay, matching the big picture where we really need to be, okay, and is the commercial targets, is it whitewashing or greenwashing at the moment? I can do this, I can make this by 2050, no problem. Okay, it is a long way away, no big deal right now, 26 years away. Is it even viable? We need to balance these three sets of the triangle. And that's all I want to mention at the moment. It's a very complex issue. We are moving towards this, and our priority right now in these three triangles itself is customers, commercial first, and then balancing the political requirements, and then looking at the biggest picture where we really need to drive to sustainability. This is the three parts of the triangle they're working with.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So Alina, if we so what Ben was, if I understand that correctly, also saying is companies, the business segment, the industry needs, of course, also boundary conditions, and these boundary conditions, the legal boundary conditions, then set the priorities. So because of course there's also certain deadlines. Nevertheless, I wanted to also discuss a little bit, so how inherent is it for us as a solar industry to improve on sustainability? I think for a long time the solar industry said, okay, we're producing, we're doing solar,
Yeah.
right? We are sustainable. I think that has changed. But how much pressure does the solar industry need, or has it understand all the signals and is just going?
So there are two questions, or there are two answers to your question. The one is at TaiyangNews Solar, really at corporate level, how are we, prioritizing sustainability aspects? We do it in a very, very scientific way, and that is, we do a materialization or materiality assessment, a risk assessment of, what kind of risk factors do you have, and what kind of impact do they have on your business today and in the future. And obviously, as Ben said, the impact is influenced by a number of things. I would say now trends, if it's political trends, if it is topical trends, So that obviously, is impacting on how you see a certain risk, right? But this is now really the corporate answer to the prioritization. The bigger picture, and maybe I can speak a little bit from my experience being based in Brussels, so where policymakers sit, but also where a lot of industry associations sit, right? NGOs sit, etc. And what I can say is that I think the solar industry is doing actually really, really well. I know other industry associations that have much more conservative approach to a number of topics that we are discussing here today. If it is about due diligence, if it is about decarbonization, etc., etc. And we really are pushing ourselves, and we probably are also being pushed because it is indeed our DNA to offer a sustainable product, right? Now, also in comparison to other energy sources, if it is now within renewables or outside, so fossil fuels, etc., we also have to see a little bit, are we actually speaking of the same standards here? And I don't think that the answer is yes, right? So I do believe that the solar industry has done a lot in order to really improve, but also communicate on its sustainability profile, even though, Bernhard, I fully agree with you, we should be doing much more to really demonstrate, how good solar is and what the benefits of solar are for everyone. But that really is a little bit my experience, with different industry associations. So I hope, Michelle, I'm, giving you important input here.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think so. What was I think also important is what Ben said. It's a customer focus, of course. I think when we look at the utility scale business, which is dominating at least worldwide, and also in Europe, where I live, many of us live here. It's now growing strong and probably at some point taking over the rooftop part. So here it is not necessarily the customer, it is also the customer which I think which BNE had in mind, because there is also more and more NIMBY activities, and it's really about integrating people and also having them also participate in the profits that are being made for the consequences. The urban landscape or the landscape is changing, especially if it is often agricultural or some other fields. Bernhard, so what's your take? So do you think, because you came with this initiative, also it's an industry-driven initiative, a little bit like the SSI too. Was it more the customer, or was it the fear actually that might be also some legal implications?
Yeah, I don't think it was. We did it by ourselves because we looked a few years in the future and anticipated there will be much damage to acceptance, especially, and we've seen that in Germany, especially for the wind industry for about 10 years, and we want to do everything that this is not going to happen to a growing ground-mounted solar PV activities. And with our approach, I don't know how much we achieve, but we can see that corporate culture in these companies is changing. They are hiring in-house experts to address the sustainability fields, even beyond the typical SDG or supply chain topics. They hire biologists. They hire agriculture experts to deal with these stakeholders, because these stakeholders are important for ground-mounted solar PV because they have the land. And I think we're going in a right direction, but satisfying, we're not completely satisfied yet, because the big conflict in Europe with the agricultural sector about the the areas and is not solved yet. And the solar economy must solve this conflict with agri-PV, but in my opinion, more important with the land use for regular solar parks, because it's more difficult there.
But also with agri-PV, I think so we have a lot of arguments on our side. So because of course then save on land, they can have another revenue source. I think it's also legislation sometimes. So for example, in Germany, it's a taxation issue. If you kind of want to hand over the land to your kids and so on. So I think I think there's always also legal boundary conditions that make it difficult, and probably that's why we have to talk about much more on what we have to offer. Jan, when we look at the products, I think what has been interesting in recent years is also the solar modules changed quite a bit. So I think not only that they got much larger, the wafers got much bigger, but they also got much more economical. I think several pointed that out. The wafers are now much thinner, so you use less material. I think you get actually rid of one plastic layer. So I don't know if that's good or worse in terms of recycling, but at least PFAS is also has become a topic. I remember times, I think we're all in the solar sector for a long time, when basically fluorine-based backsheets were the norm. So I think because everyone was saying, I think without fluorine, the solar module will not last very long. And so I think things are changing also. And how do you see it from a recyclability point of view here?
Well, it's of course it's helpful. Let's say that the plastics are removed, the back sheets are removed. So there are a lot of good evolutions. That's point one. On the other hand, what we see, and it's really what the recyclers are putting really in front of us already several times, of course, with the glass panels, and in general, I would say, remember my first slide, composition of the material, the valuable materials are going down. So the amount is less of silicon, the amount of silver paste is less, copper is less. So economically, I think this will be a bit the game changer of the next years. Of course, there is still, for instance, now in Europe, let's assume we still have 180 gigawatt to recycle with backsheets. But when really the glass panels come back into the recycling yard, I think it might have an impact on the economical side. That it will cost a bit more, probably because the materials which are recovered are less in weight and then profitability. That's one. The second point. The third point is coming back to your point, which you also raised about hazardous or whatever. We did last year again, and that was at the end of 2023. We did again waste sample analysis in the UK now, and there we took several samples. Of course, I cannot reveal the names of the brands here, but what was interesting that we had samples also of panels from the period 2010, from two manufacturers, two brands, and we also had panels from 2019, and even also a good sample of 2021, so more recent date. And we put them against all kind of challenges, whatever. We said, lead, antimony, everything what you can imagine has to be verified. What was the outcome? That the panels of the recent years, they were all below any thresholds of alert, let's say. So it was all non-hazardous. And only the panels from 2010, there were, of course, these two panels. It was the two brands, even. It was not important now, the brands, but it also shows at that time, yes, they were flirting. Of course, with lead was then an issue. They were above the threshold. So I think that's really showing the evolution in a time span of only 10 years. That 10 years ago, a little bit above for some substances, and now 12 years later, above any threshold. So that's really a very positive evolution already regarding this point. I also saw it in the comments that somebody was putting the word toxic in the chat. No, there is nothing about the toxicity in this product. So that's all a positive evolution, but I think the not downside, but I think due to having less valuable materials, it might have in the long run maybe an impact on the cost of treating and recycling the glass PP panels, for example.
So I think in Europe we're still waiting for eco design to to happen. For some miraculously, it's always delayed and delayed and delayed. But when we talk about the product, as you said, I think it's improving, and maybe that's also to all what we're seeing. So I think the first manufacturers are now completely heavy metal free. So I think because there's always still a little bit of lead in the ribbon, or not always, but often still, it makes it simply easier to use it. I think there's often antimony in glass still, I think, which makes it more difficult to recycle. So are we seeing all this? Because of course, but on the manufacturing side, that means also larger costs. So, but are we still seeing companies, I don't know, in the next few years to kind of trying to get even rid of all this stuff to be as pure as possible, which would make recycling even easier?
Is this a question to me, Michael?
To everyone is open, as I think what we're seeing on the recycling side and maybe also the manufacturers.
Yeah, well, I think I would better first leave it up to the manufacturer side. I think to listen to their point of view, because I think it's we are there to solve and find solutions on some challenges, but I think it's really, I think this point has to come from the manufacturers. And you referred already to eco design as well in Europe. I think that might probably be a game changer. This will help a lot. But yeah, it's an open now when it will come, but this really will give a push to I would say to all of us, and it will also have an impact, a global impact, because of course EU can regulate something, but you will not make only EU panels, so it will have an impact anyway on the other regions on this planet as well. But yeah, cross fingers when it will come alive.
Okay, maybe Ben, Alina. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I can jump here in first, you know, there is eco design, and then there is REACH regulation, so really chemicals regulation that is not specific now to solar, but to any industry. And none of them has now really set, you know, any particular rules that would really impact the solar industry. But of course, you know, we as Trading Solar, we have been looking, for example, okay, how can we make sure that we don't have PFAS in our PV modules? And so, you know, we are PFAS-free certified, and that obviously is an important thing. But, you know, we also have to understand that certain chemicals do certain things, right? And I worked, for example, several years for the batteries industry, and you know, batteries are heavy in chemicals because that actually is their scientific nature, right? So you use chemicals in order to store energy. And I think what is a little forgotten in the whole discussion is always, you know, where is a risk and where is a hazard? And these two things are not the same. So we also have to be smart. And when I say we have to be smart as manufacturers, we have to be smart as policymakers and really look, okay, how can you actually ensure that you have at the end a net sustainability benefit, right? Because sometimes you can be opting for one thing, but you actually increase, you know, the other environmental aspects, and you don't actually come to a net environmental benefit. So I think this is something that also needs to be considered, both by manufacturers, both by R&D, as well as by policymakers.
Okay. Ben, you want to add anything or leave it? Okay. And then,
not my expert area.
you want to comment, Jan, from your side, or?
No, I fully agree with what Alina said on this point, and I think she really touched also an important item. I think we also may not forget what the product is about, and a PV panel, and it's often forgotten, is an investment product, and it really in Europe, I think we realized after an invasion from a man in a country, we realized at that point that PV panels and in general renewable energy equipment is vital for the economy, is vital for businesses, is vital for households, because we saw energy bill increasing. And I think the discussion also has to be with policymakers. And I'm not now pointing not to Alina, because she said, yeah, maybe standing still is not good. Of course, no, we have to improve. We have to, it's a continuous improvement. But on the other hand, I think also as industry, we have put much more the message to policymakers, stating, hey, dear policymakers, what exactly do you want? Because we are an investment product. We are providing clean energy for the society in general, so households and businesses at a very low cost. Yes, we accept there are environmental regulations, energy requirements to our products and so on, all fine. But there we really want a clear impact assessment only for renewable energy equipment, in order that we are not anymore put on a pile with, in our case now for extended producer responsibility, with some stupid electronic waste, toothbrushes, little washing machines and laptops. Okay, where the requirements must be different because it's consumable waste. It's waste, it's products which we use after 3 years, we do not like it anymore, or it's not working anymore and we throw it away. With PV, it's completely different. This has really an economical impact. And then it would be very good to have an impact assessment. Okay, also from a policy perspective, we accept some items which cannot be improved anymore because the product really, if you want near society that it generates clean energy, well, these are the elements which are needed and must have in the product. And now I think, now I have sometimes the feeling that the discussion is going in a direction where yeah, people expect that a PV panel very soon is something out of beautiful paper, and it will also generate electricity. Well, this reality check has to come to the policy table and saying, guys, no, we are already very far, and also we would also like to have a green lane, let's call it a green lane, where we by accept this is really a key product for our society, whereby, with all respect, we can miss today an electrical toothbrush, because 20 years ago we did it without, and it was also possible to. And a TV set, we can miss it. There are a lot of things we can miss in this electronic equipment, but a PV panel, a windmill, we cannot miss anymore. And this has also to take into account much more when policymakers are discussing and assessing environmental regulations in the broader sense to PV panels, for example.
Okay. Let's maybe then talk about briefly the policy regulations part. So I don't know, to keep it simple, I think many of you are active mostly in Europe, but I think also some have a global overview. When you look at ESG related policy regulations, so in these different regions, so can you just point out some really good, something bad, and something really ugly? What you as the industry would like to see replicated or not to see at all?
Maybe I can answer that question first. There is one, and I know that you are not asking that question, but I will say it nonetheless. There is one ESG-related policy that is extremely important, and that is the Renewable Energy Directive. Now, I know that this was not the question because it actually sets the framework for how we do business, right? For how we deploy solar modules, and not necessarily how we design and manufacture them and under which conditions. But it is nonetheless ESG because it's ESG really for society as a whole, right? And it was so important that the European Union has now set a very concrete target of 42.5 plus 2.5, so 45% of renewable energy by 2030, because that is significant and that's so important for decarbonization and actually getting to where we should be in 2050, and that is climate neutrality.
Okay. Any other positive examples?
I mean, if no one wants, I do believe that, you know, corporate due diligence, for example, right? It is also a burden. It is something, you know, you have to go through your whole business, you have to assess everything, and moreover, you have to assess it on a risk-based approach, which really means, you know, you have to define scenarios of the worst case scenarios. But even though it is a burden, it is good that there is a common standard for everyone, right? And that we can compare apples with apples, and that we all know, okay, company A are doing the same as company B, and that really has developed, I think, not only a common understanding, but also a common ground for working in the renewables business again, as well as in any other business, because it's not just about renewables. But, you know, in general, I think it is good when we are speaking of common standards, right? When we are speaking of common understanding, because it makes everything much more important. And that's why I'm also so much looking forward to the eco-design directive that hopefully will, you know, be presented at one point in time, because it will also give a common understanding on, you know, how do you calculate a carbon footprint, for example, right? What are the common cornerstones of a solar models when we are talking about environment? So this is something maybe I want to point out, common standards.
Okay, I think so. So we see that, of course, we often complain where many of us are active also in policy lobbying, and that's the job. But maybe Benjamin, and I think we're here all in Europe, many of us. But Benjamin, you have also the global view. So if you look at, you know, Europe is maybe around 20% of the market, the global market. Then you have the US, it's another 20%. But then you have China, which was last year almost 60%. So when you look at, so that means not only most of the product is produced in China, but also the majority by far is deployed in China. So what are we seeing here as a solar industry? So we talked a lot about Europe. Are you seeing that in other regions of the world, similarly good or bad happening?
Oh, that's a very broad question.
Yeah, sure. I think
when we first met, I was working on a global platform, but right now I'm in Europe at the moment, so I'm much more familiar with Europe. But just draw back a little bit, is that right now we see the two most mature set of regulation or ESG for ESG and traceability is setting in the USA as well as in Europe at the moment. And a lot of other countries itself kind of adopt a hybrid system of this. In Canada, they adopt a hybrid system of USA as well as that of Europe, and so for Southeast Asia countries itself. What I really would like to see, and it comes back to Pierre's point, is a common standard. If I draw an example from accounting, in accounting, you actually have two standards. One is the US GAAP, the globally accepted accounting principles, and then you also have the IFRS, which is used throughout the rest of the world. Okay. At this moment, we don't have something like this. We have different reporting standards, even between Europe and definitely across every country of the world itself. And that makes things tremendously difficult to manage for a company like LONGi that works on a global footprint. You have to look at these requirements of ESG as traceability on an individual country footprint rather than, let's just say, a global footprint at the moment. Okay, or at least in the accounting standard, you have the US footprint and the rest of the world footprint.
Okay. Anyone else? Bernard, policy wise?
Maybe one point. It's not one-on-one policy, but it's the follow-up of policy. It's inspection. But okay, from our perspective, and I'm now speaking just purely on recycling item, and I also mentioned already in the reuse things as well, the discussion, I think inspection is much more needed, not only in Europe, on a global level, on what is happening with shipments of PV panels, especially used PV panels. there is a complete lack of inspection on it, and this will one day be blown in our face, and I'm afraid of the day where it will be breaking news on CNN. So I think that's also an item which is forgotten, and in general it's an item. It's an item in any track and tracing on waste items. But we also have to stress this a bit more into the discussion. It's all nice to have a long list of requirements regarding environmental subjects, but then is the question, who is inspecting this? It's not only to have a level playing field amongst all the players in the market, but it's also to have really a professional follow-up on all what is produced as a policy requirement. So that would be my add-on in the policy item here.
I think that's a good point. I believe Bernard mentioned that also, that they, with their good practice, are actually setting that up. And I think the SSI is also exactly about this. It's creating standards, but also how this can be checked, because the transparency topic is obviously a very hot one from various views. So maybe that's, I think we're actually already over time. So maybe just a final question. I could talk for you for hours, but I think let's come to a close. So if we look at sustainability in the solar sector today, we've gone quite a bit in recent years, and we look a little bit into the crystal ball, and I think 3 years is not too far. So it's not the big 2030 targets that many of you have. So what will have changed in the solar sector in 3 years from now? Maybe who wants to start? Bernard?
Yeah, I will try. I think we will improve sustainability in the solar sector because we can do it. Yeah, there are many activities showing that it's possible, and there are measures for it. But I think this has to work on a narrative level too. Yeah, because we're highlighting our sustainability efforts, and that it's a bit dangerous that it is mixed up with every other industry that is not net zero industry technology, that has not that long-lasting projects that will solve the climate crisis. Yeah, and I think what will happen in 3 years, it will be better. Yeah, it will be more transparent, and I hope so it will be more visible in the narrative too.
Okay, thanks. Alina?
In view of time, I will be very short, because in 3 years we will see the post-data ban regulation kick in, the corporate due diligence directive kicking in, the Net Zero Industry Act has had its first implementation around probably. So there are a number of pieces of legislation that simply will shape a lot further of what we're already doing today. And so this is definitely the answer to the questions of what will happen in 2027.
Okay, thanks. That's for Europe. Ben?
I have nothing to add, honestly. This is again, policy is again not my favorite subject at the moment. I'm going to focus more on the commercial side of things, and I'm following it mostly from commercial side. But of course, policy is important, and we need to track it.
But look at it also, sustainability from the commercial side of things. So I think you have your targets, you're upbeat also with all these of course, constraints that we are having at the moment, because we know all in what state the sector is. We have this huge overcapacities. The market is growing, but not as much as we grew on the supply side of things. So might that have an impact on a negative or even a positive impact on sustainability activities of companies in the next 2 years?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a separate topic altogether. The industry goes through these cycles every 4, 5, 6 years. I think you've seen this all the time, up and up. This is a bit probably a little bit more adverse, and there will be some consolidation in the industry. But I think the the track on sustainability, the requirement and ESG is going to move forward. Okay, it's not going to be slowed by the consolidation of the industry, nor by the difficulties the industry is facing at the moment, because this is being driven at the moment by customers, it's being driven by law at the moment. Okay, and also being driven by the very top of this of the PV tier 1 manufacturers.
Okay.
So honestly, no, I don't think so. It's a completely different track altogether.
Okay, thanks. Jan, end of life and the life afterwards, the potential, that's your topic. So you're the last commentator.
Yeah, well, I fully agree with what Bernard and Alina were also stating on this point. I also look forward to a lot of consequences of now legislation which just has started or just implemented. That's point one. With Benjamin as well, I think also it's important, also often forgotten, what the consumer, is it now B2C or B2B, is really asking for and requesting for. And I think also as industry, we need to assess this a bit more to understand, is the final customer really interested in all the efforts we are doing, that it's also measurable, and also that we can use this towards policymakers to give them feedback. But coming back to end of life, I think yes, in Europe, the WE directive is under evaluation, or in a long process. We will see what the new commission now will do with it. At the end, I stick to our position already. We have no issue to be still under extended producer responsibility obligations, but we are clearly stating the WE directive is not the instrument under which this has to be dealt with. And we would really like to also have an impact assessment on all renewable energy equipment, that we also finally have a discussion about windmills, about solar thermal, and many others. And then really have this broad discussion on, okay, dear society, what do you really want with the complete renewable energy equipment industry and their products, regarding then the environmental questions related to producer responsibility. But like it is today, or like it was now the past 10 years under the e-waste legislation, this really is a joke. If you have to abide to targets and to achievements which are only built and fit for TV sets and washing machines, that's really then it's not, it is a joke and even not professional. So that's really a big invitation to the policymakers and the new European Commission, that they are willing to take up this invitation and to have this broad discussion on what finally do we mean as renewable energy sector in the current society.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks a lot to everyone. So I learned a lot. I'm always happy. I hope that the audience is also happy and the panelists are also happy. So thanks to everyone, also to the Taiyang team. Just a few announcements. So we talked a lot about Europe today. If you want to learn more, and I think there will be also more time, and there's a physical event taken in Brussels on December 12th, organized by Solar Power Europe and Intersolar on solar sustainability. There will be also policymakers. So I think if you're interested in this, please come to Brussels. There will be also a European Solar Sustainability Award. I'm in the jury, so if you're interested, there will be soon also a call for this. So please participate. So just a few announcements on the Taiyang side. Uday, can you show the slides? Thanks. Yeah, of course, thanks to the sponsors. We have a new report out today. So we published our market survey on solar trackers, which gives you almost everything you need to understand the latest on trackers, manufacturers, and the market, how it's going, and the technology trends. We have also a few more events. I think first time we do a physical event, and we do it in the US during RE+ together with EUPD Research. And we talk about how to manufacture, or we will discuss how to manufacture solar wafer cells and modules competitively in the US. Unlike we in Europe, they have in the US a very interesting scheme with the IRA. that has driven so far already quite some interest and already also some investments. And we will try to gather the community, the stakeholders in that field, and discuss with them about manufacturing. Our next online event will be on September 18th, and we will have speakers mostly from the industry, but also from research, to talk about advanced solar module applications. So we will look into all the different applications. There's much more customer designed modules now for rooftops, flexible modules that are lightweight for commercial rooftops, BIPV modules, special modules for floating systems. Whatever is out there, we want to showcase that. So once again, thanks to everyone. Have a nice afternoon or a nice evening, and hope to see you soon. Ciao, ciao.